right time. I think Luca's going to be very careful with things. I do like how that Pokemon looks in this matchup, but and we see it right away.
Yeah, well, yeah, you like the way that the Pokemon looks in the matchup? Well, I guess Luca does too. It is the Fluttermane and the Chi-Yu for Luca, as Lorcy will start out with the Wellspring Ogerpon and the Farigiraf.
I'm really excited to see how both these trainers play this because the first turn kind of could be a little bit of a bait. I think easily if Luca wants to, he could just pick up the knockout in the Ogerpon, but is allowing a Trick Room for that going to be worth it, right? You get the free switch in of one of the powerful sweeping Pokemon, perhaps. The Pokemon advantage might not actually be a lead in the game, so I'll be curious, maybe if he tries to slow play this a little bit, or if you just feel like, well, I can't stop the Trick Room, so maybe I'll try to pick up a knockout and get more out of it.
Yeah, this is a really tough call because you could go for that safe Trick Room setup, but you can see that Lorcy is hovering over, just trying to get some damage down, maybe thinking that the Ogerpon might not be as useful in that late game, but you gotta lock it in quickly. We will see a Terastallization on the other side, though. Luca's gonna go ahead and commit this right away to the Chi-Yu, so it is going to be getting that Terra Ghost typing. Now, that's a great defensive Terra type, but it's also kind of in anticipation of maybe an Ivy Cudgel coming its way, which is not the case.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps makes sense there, and at least I guess Joshua said you're pretty excited about forcing this Terra kind of for nothing, but the damage is going to come down here. Could be a tough turn for both these Pokemon. The spread move's coming down. It picks up a double knockout.
Wow, we talked about the Citrus Berry recovery on that Farigiraf. Could be a huge deal, but not if the Dazzling Gleam isn't going to bring that Farigiraf down into that range. So the berry does not activate, and a huge 2 Pokemon knockout here for Luca right off the bat. This does not look good for that Blood Moon or Saluna that's in the back.
Oh, not at all. I mean, hey, you're wondering, Luca going to play this fast? Luca going to play this slow? Playing it fast looking really good. Yeah, just turn on the offense. You could knock out both Pokemon, why wouldn't you?
I think this is a matchup you also have to be a little prepared for. Knowing how many players did bring the Iron Jugulus into day number 1, I'm sure that was something that people started to anticipate. How are these trainers going to try to sort of shape the game to be able to keep using this team to success?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, too. I mean, we don't see as much of this Fluttermane Chi-Yu combination as we used to see, but it's another thing that's kind of, been on the checklist of things you've got to be able to deal with for a long time there, and, that just didn't work, right? Where this is going to be almost impossible for Joshua to pull back in this first game.
Yeah, Josh did go for the Protect onto the Blood Moon or Saluna, but Luca isn't falling for it. You did see that big Moonblast into the Incineroar, and the Heat Wave to follow it up isn't going to be doing too much to that Incineroar, but it does bring it into a range where if you end up getting another Moonblast into that Incineroar, it's going to be really, really easy to knock it out. Now, that being said, the Ghost Arrow of the Chi-Yu did make it way more susceptible to that knockout, and it will be falling here for something else to take its place.
Yeah, winds up with a negative value terrestrialization there, but still, I can't imagine Luca's too upset about this. He's got to keep getting the damage down, right? It's a huge lead. Just can't do anything crazy to try to throw it away. And Urshifu coming out here puts him in great position. Could knock out either of these Pokemon, perhaps. Looking very, very good for Luca.
Yeah, it feels so easy to lock in something like the close combat because Ursaluna nor Incineroar really want to take that move, and you still have that natural speed on Luca's side where this Ursaluna very much trained to try to operate in that Trick Room, and Incineroar is not the speediest of Pokemon.
And not at all. I mean, that Assault Vest, it's very sturdy, right? You see how well it took the attacks in the last turn, but really not the sort of Pokemon you're imagining picking up 3 knockouts on its own, right? Especially in a matchup like this one.
Well, we see that Lorcy at this point needs to be thinking ahead towards that game number 2. That lead did not work out for him, and there really wasn't anything that he could have done differently in that first turn. With the Follow Me and the Trick Room, it just wasn't quite enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a scary thing. I think that's, it makes sense here. If you see it another knockout, Joshua understands he's not going to win this game, right? But the way that he leads in the second game is really important. It's giving him more time to kind of think through the right way to do this. Because, I mean, you assume with the move he made, he was just expecting at least Farigiraf to survive that, right? Where, maybe Luca goes for a single target attack. Maybe, he goes for the double spread moves, but it's not enough to pick up the knockout. But it wound up being, just perfectly placed damage where it didn't activate the Citrus Berry and then did pick up that knockout. Perhaps both sides getting some information about how their Pokemon are trained, but I mean, that's just tough where I think that may have been exactly what Joshua thought that he wanted, and it really backfired.
Yeah, I think with Fluttermane as well, it kind of, no matter how it's trained, unless it does get a booster energy special attack or it is choice specs, I don't think you ever expect that Dazzling Gleam will do more than half damage to that Farigiraf. So I feel like that was a really nicely calculated play by Luca. The only way that that goes wrong is if the Heat Wave misses. So it's very possible that Lorcy just wants to run it back and kind of hope that that luck is a little different this time around. But look at that. Perfect amount of damage onto both Pokemon.
Yeah, really seeing the impact. And we mentioned the Chi-Yu ability could make a big difference. But yeah, I guess when you knock out 2 Pokemon before, Joshua even gets the chance to attack back, it's pretty good value from Beads of Ruin. And yeah, if I'm Joshua, you gotta think of something here, right? We're hoping for a 15% chance of a move missing to avoid getting eliminated from tournament. Yeah, it's just not good enough, right?
So what do you feel about the Iron Jugulus? Do you feel like that is a Pokemon that can make an appearance? Because based on the leads that Luca made with the Fluttermane as well as the Chi-Yu, I feel like Iron Jugulus is still not in a fantastic position, but you do give yourself a little bit of a chance if you can go for something like the Snarl. Maybe you buy your partner some time.
Yeah, maybe, right? Where I kind of wonder if this game, speed control is just maybe too slow, where, and Lucas said that he's just trading blows with all these powerful Pokemon and all the damage where, I think literally every Pokemon on the team, other than the more supportive Raging Bull, can really dish out damage. And as much as it's great to go first, it doesn't really matter if you can't win trades, right? Where, I think it's just a tough spot because one of the weaknesses of this situation for Lorcy, he's dedicated a lot of resources in the team to getting control of the board, right? Where a lot of supportive moves, both in terms of speed control and other ways of getting control of the match, and you just kind of got overwhelmed.
Well, heading into this game number 2, are there any adjustments from Luca? There is not. It will be the Chi-Yu and the Fluttermane once again, but Lorcy has definitely switched things up. That Wellspring Ogerpon is back, but this time next to his own Fluttermane.
So fighting offense with offense this time. Pretty scary spot for all the Pokemon in the field now with the Beads of Ruin making these Fluttermane look very intimidating.
Yeah, I do see a very quick sequence of events there for Lorcy. Wants to lock something in very fast, but I think this is the trouble of the different Fluttermanes here is that Lucas is that booster energy speed, but Lorcy's is the choice spec. So you can expect that Lucas Fluttermane will go first, and yours will probably take a lot of damage. While we do see Fluttermane is a little bit more special defensively bulky, that's not going to help you against something like that Chi-Yu Beads of Ruin.
Yeah, and we saw how much damage it did that previous game, right? Maybe Joshua reading in this is a more aggressively trained Fluttermane, and I just don't want to deal with that. Where Azet plays pretty conservatively, and Cinder can have a decent type matchup against potential attacks, either a fire type move from the Chi-Yu or a Shadow Ball from that Fluttermane, and the boosted special defense on Ogerpon will potentially help it do a little bit better of his turn as well.
Well, it's a defensive play coming out from Luca with the Fluttermane going for the Protect. It's the Heat Wave, though, from the Chi-Yu that could spell a little bit of disaster. It does miss the Ogerpon, though, but the Ivy Cudgel was heading the way of the Fluttermane, so this is just going to be a little bit of chip here for Luca to start the game.
Yeah, much better turn this time for Joshua, getting nice switch in there. But yeah, wow, I'm sure Luca's heart stopped for just a second there with that Ivy Cudgel went off. That goes into Chi-Yu. We're almost looking at what we saw last game in reverse. Instead, both sides still in a pretty good position here. This time, no Terrestrialization yet from the Chi-Yu, but having Incineroar on the field kind of baits it now, right? Where both Fake Out and Ivy Cudgel looking a little bit scary.
Yeah, I really like the play, though, to continue to go after the Fluttermane, because I think that's one of the, because it's one of the faster pieces on Luca's end, you do have to prioritize it. You can see the Icy Wind coming out now as one of Luca's forms of speed control to drop the Ogerpon and Incineroar speed, but with a Heat Wave connecting onto both, you're really hoping that there's no burn, and there is not. The Ogerpon gets to go for the Ivy Cudgel and take out this Fluttermane with that boost to its water type attack. That is a clean KO.
That's a big knockout there. Don't have to worry about that Fluttermane and that boosted speed anymore. So kind of an alternate means of getting speed control. No Terrestrialization, wisely. Do not see that one-hit knockout we saw in the last game, but we do see the choice specs getting knocked off. So Chi-Yu now able to switch moves, but going to be doing even less damage to these two Pokemon.
Yeah, so that does become interesting, though, right? Because now you're not locked into Heat Wave. You could go for something like a single target Dark Pulse or an Overheat, and that really opens up the realm of possibilities, especially as this Ogerpon is going to take its partner's place next to that Chi-Yu. You have access to Follow Me.
Yeah, it's a nice spot to be in, right? Where now that, again, the Chi-Yu not terrestrializing looking pretty good, where are you really going to try to risk an Ivy Cudgel here? Maybe you sneak one in, but it'd be a big risk to take at this point in the game.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to take that risk right now. So that's why we do see Lorcy trying to lock into a bit more of a defensive option. But Luca can just sort of dish out damage. I think the Incineroar feels so free to hit into, if only because you know that it can't protect. So let's see what's going to happen this turn, as the Dark Pulse does head the way of Lorcy's Ogerpon. So a very nice spiky shield there to be able to deny that extra damage. But the Ivy Cudgel coming out from Luca's Ogerpon is plenty to be able to knock out that Incineroar. So just like that, Lorcy's going to have to figure out another Pokemon to put next to this Ogerpon side. And Iron Jugulis feels like the perfect partner to bring into its place.
Yeah, I really like how Joshua staggered his Pokemon this time, bringing the speed control Pokemon a little bit later after he'd already secured a safer board state. It's looking a little bit better against both these Pokemon. No longer has to deal with the choice specs. And, I got to shout out that Incineroar too, right? Where even though it looked like it didn't do a whole lot, it helped Ogerpon stall out the game long enough to kind of recover the board state a little bit. Assault Vest was looking pretty good there. Both of them kind of in different ways getting that boosted special defense to survive the early turns of this game.
Yeah, it was a great switch in to be able to take those special attacks. But now you have this Iron Jugulis on the field that has all of the tools you would want right now at its disposal. Tailwind is so nice because your Ogerpon did take that -1 from the Icy Wind earlier on, so you can help to mitigate that difference in speed just a little bit and maybe even make this Ogerpon faster, but you still have to worry about the Ogerpon on Luca's side.
Yeah, I think when Tailwind gets used is important here too. That Fluttermane in the back is going to be able to dish out some pretty serious damage if it comes out and gets the chance to use it for your turns. We're seeing those choice specs, so the safest it can get out, the better.
Ooh, it's going to be the Horn Leech too. So a nice little bit of HP recovery to bring that Ogerpon back up to full. But because this Ogerpon is faster, take a look out for what Luca's could go for. It's the Overheat first and the Iron Jugulis. It's a huge amount of damage, but now you don't have to worry nearly as much about this Chiyu special attack. Horn Leech in response, wow. Like, even though this Ogerpon is just a tiny little thing, that did a lot of damage.
Yeah, the type chart, or the type change of the Terrestrialization really backfiring there. You're going to see that Horn Leech trade not very advantageous. Certainly no choice on Lorcy's side. You only had to Terrestrialize earlier in the game, and it really did pay dividends. But now he's in a tough spot where Tailwind's already active, but he's got 2 weakened Pokemon to try to navigate his way through it and get that Fluttermane in time to do some serious damage.
I don't think the Ogerpon even took an Intimidate drop, right? Like, it got brought in while the Incineroar was already on the field, so that is a really nice amount of damage for Luca to be able to play around. Spiky Shield, though, here, as the Iron Jugulis wanted to go for the Air Slash, but a great read from Lorcy to just go for the gold anyway with the Ivy Cudgel. Not even phased. If there was going to be a Follow Me, Air Slash might even have been enough to pick up the Ogerpon before we saw this Ivy Cudgel come out. So now that Chiyu is out of the question, where is this 4th and final Pokemon? What is it going to be here for Luca? It's going to be that Urshifu.
Well, I guess the good news now for Lorcy is you know that it doesn't matter now when Fluttermane comes out. It's going to be faster than all these Pokemon anyway, now that we know what they are. So instead of sort of an interesting situation with these Pokemon facing off here, we saw kind of in the previous turn that Ogerpon was pretty threatened, but it's a little bit safer with this Urshifu next to it, potentially threatening a Sucker Punch to knock out either of these Pokemon.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest keys that we've seen over the last few weeks of the Regulation F meta is that even if you have speed not in your favor, well, priority moves sure can change that up. So I really like the opportunity to try to switch in something now because you are also running out of Tailwind turns. You only have 2 left, so Lorcy's going to have to make the most of these.
Yeah, it's a scary spot too, right? Where he kind of has almost no choice but to allow a free shot from this Urshifu despite having a speed control advantage. And it's such a powerful Pokemon, even if it is able to fire a maybe resistant hit to this Iron Jugulis, it's still pretty scary damage.
I think what you're hoping for if you're Lorcy is that Luca's decided to go for maybe a Sucker Punch into the Ogerpon slot. But there is a Terrestrialization finally on Luca's side. It will be that Wellspring Ogerpon. It's going to get the Embody Aspect boost too, which is so nice looking at the Iron Jugulis and the Fluttermane that is on the opposing side. And Lorcy did call it right. It is going to be the Sucker Punch into the Fluttermane. So now this Air Slash is going to be able to connect into the Ogerpon. But look at how little damage that's going to do after this Terrestrialization away from the Grass type. Plus that special defense boost. Now the Ivy Cudgel is going to get the knockout onto the Iron Jugulis. And it's 2v2 for both of our trainers in this game too.
Yeah, I think, Joshua's looked so good for most of this game, but suddenly it's kind of looking like Luca's got a great position again. Healthier Pokemon, certainly mattering a lot here. And then even though, the tight matchup might not be the greatest, the Focus Sash and Urshifu here is looking pretty scary. Going to be tough to get those 2 attacks required to knock it off because any single target attacks are a little bit difficult to use with the threat of Ogerpon just pulling them away.
I think that's the big key here, too, is that Fluttermane right now also has to lock into something. It's got to make one choice, and that is what it has for the rest of the game thanks to those choice specs. And with a special defense boosted Ogerpon on Luca's side, it's also still very, very healthy. So I think it got a lot of value out of the Horn Leech it was able to use earlier on in the game, and now it's got a ton of staying power versus both of these special attackers.
Yeah, I think the choice lock is a huge difference, too, right? Where this Urshifu can detect if it wants to, right? Have the opportunity maybe for the Ogerpon either to knock out his partner or to cause some damage here, but no, just to follow me, we'll have to see how the Pokemon trade.
Well, that's a great trade here for Lorcy so far because Sucker Punch was heading in the direction of that Fluttermane, but thanks to that follow me, it's not going to be able to connect. So now Fluttermane gets a chance to go down to this Urshifu's Focus Sash, maybe get a chance to knock it out. But the Ivy Cudgel will be able to get rid of this Ogerpon once and for all. But can Fluttermane get the job done? It's locked into Dazzling Gleam now versus both of these Pokemon.
Yeah, so a pretty fun little trade there by Luca, right? Where, he able to pick up the knockout, and now even though the full health Fluttermane there, I think the assumption is the combination of Sucker Punch and a swing from the Ogerpon will be enough. It would certainly need a critical hit from a Dazzling Gleam to pick up Ogerpon here, so we'll see the Sucker Punch come in. Joshua's going to need to get a little lucky to get through this one.
All right, well, the Dazzling Gleam will for sure knock out that Urshifu, but it's not going to be the critical hit onto the Ogerpon, so with that quarter HP remaining, Luca gets a chance to strike back, strike down that Fluttermane, really show the people why Ogerpon was winning that community prediction bracket, and Luca will take this series 2-0.
Great set by Luca there.